7 minutes ago. WITKOFF did not expect this in Moscow. Peace talks turned into burning coals. Putin has sparked a new conflict. Zaluzhny's shock turns the course of events. Statements that Ukrainians are applauding. The armed forces of Ukraine are launching a large-scale operation. Strikes on Russia have never been like this before. A fiery apocalypse has indeed engulfed the enemy. Gerasimov is once again handing Putin fake trophies. The dictator's tankers have set out on their final voyage. The SBU has closed the trap. All this in our episode Hellpoint. Urgent. The US has harshly set up Ukraine for peace on Russia's terms. The Geneva, Florida formula has failed. Putin is openly leading the Americans by the nose. An emergency statement from the Kremlin. Donbass and Crimea are being cut off from Ukraine. Europe is opening Washington's eyes. Action must be taken immediately. Zelensky is taking the situation into his own hands. The latest details on the development of peace negotiations are coming up next.
The Americans have visited Russia again. They were met at Vnukovo by Putin's special representative Kirill Dmitriev. The Kremlin is preparing to push through its own version of the peace plan for Ukraine.
There's a process underway there, and it's a serious one. Just now, Putin said that Lukashenko will provide information. How are things progressing on this track? Right now, perhaps, nothing is more important than this. Of course, many people will appear who won't hesitate to do anything to derail this process.
The day before, Stephen Witka took part in a meeting between the American delegation and representatives of Ukraine in Florida.
We don't just want to effectively end this devastating war, we also want to genuinely help Ukraine achieve lasting and enduring security so that it never, ever has to face another brutal invasion again in the future. The negotiations were productive, but more work still needs to be done.
Some progress was noted, however. No concrete agreements were reached.
We are already halfway to securing Ukraine's independence. Today, we made significant progress. Russia must become part of the negotiations regarding a Ukrainian settlement. For this purpose, WITKOFF will travel to Moscow.
American journalists are speculating that this time Trump did not send the usual team to Russia. The usual team of negotiators, Siva WITKOFF and Jared Kushner.
While the Trump administration is urgently seeking to secure a peace agreement to end the war in Ukraine, President Donald Trump is sending 2 of his top diplomats to Moscow. These are his former business partner and his son-in-law, and neither of them has been confirmed by the Senate lawmakers.
Rumor has it in the White House that Trump is showing that he is for personal diplomacy instead of bureaucracy. The US president believes that it is precisely WITKOFF and Kushner who are supposedly capable of closing the deal. These were Moscow troops who prided themselves on what they had done for the development of the station. He is the negotiator from the Russian side. Putin himself said this.
When we sit down at the negotiating table and get down to specifics, we will seriously discuss each of the proposed points for discussion. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs on our side, from the administration side, that's Medinsky. Vladimir Rostislavovich, the president's aide, he has been handling this from the very beginning. Well, for current affairs, in order to organize all this work into work, my aide has also been included by me. Yuri Viktorovich Ushakov, he is in contact with the American colleagues, but he can't do all of this alone. This should be handled by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also part of the presidential administration. It's a very large set of issues that need to be discussed, documented, properly written out, and the dots put over the i's. Set everything straight.
At the press conference, the Kremlin dictator stated that one of the key topics would be the status of Crimea and Donbass. And then he got really inspired and blurted out, "The Russian Federation is ready to go to war with Europe. We
are not going to fight with Europe. I've said this 100 times already. But if Europe suddenly wants to go to war with us and starts it, we are ready right now."
Before WITKOFF's negotiations in Moscow regarding the peace plan, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that the issue of territories is the most difficult one.
This, I say openly, is a territorial issue. The most difficult issues are money and reconstruction. Without the presence of European partners, it is difficult to accept. And the issue of security guarantees. Specifics from the US and Europe are important. We need to be very careful here, but the plan looks better.
According to media reports, the initial version of the plan, consisting of 28 points, included recognition of Ukrainian territories as belonging to Russia and the possible withdrawal of the armed forces of Ukraine even from those parts of Donetsk region that the occupiers failed to capture. In Ukraine, this has repeatedly been called unacceptable. European allies of Ukraine have also opposed such steps. This is already the 6th visit by American envoys to discuss peace. The previous one was at the end of summer. At that time, the meeting took place against the backdrop of an ultimatum that Donald Trump issued to the Kremlin. Disappointed by the lack of progress in resolving the war in Ukraine, the head of the White House first gave Putin 50 days and then 10 to achieve a ceasefire.
We agreed on serious security guarantees, which I would describe as game-changing. We didn't think we would get this close to an Article 5 level protection agreement. On the part of the US, it is legislatively enshrined in Russia as an obligation not to encroach on other territories after the codification of the peace agreement. So we reached an agreement, and that's not all.
Since then, nothing has changed except for the strengthening of sanctions. Putin has decided to continue his bloody war in Ukraine.
Urgently, Zaluzhnyi bursts into the US peace plan with a shocking statement about the real end of the war. Words that could change the entire game. The world is holding its breath. A decisive plan of action is already being implemented at the front. Zaluzhny's strategy is making the Kremlin nervous. At this time, the armed forces of Ukraine are step-by-step destroying all of Putin's dreams of a quick victory. Is a double-strength strike against Russia's might just around the corner? The first details, don't miss it.
Russia is trying to exhaust Ukraine and destroy it from within, and political illusions about reconciliation could end in internal conflict. This is written by Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Valery Zaluzhnyi. In his column for the publication Liga.net, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, after a long period of silence and working in the foggy Albion, appears to have returned not only to the information space but has also physically come back to Ukraine. After the dismissal of the head of the president's office, Andriy Yermak, and the unstable political situation, it seems that President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has played his trump card. This is the return of the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine.
There is an opportunity to quickly bring Zaluzhnyi back from London. This will immediately strengthen Ukraine's overall position. And to a significant extent, Zaluzhnyi is sitting in London as an ambassador, as far as I comprehensively understand, precisely for such a critical moment, when some kind of unified consolidation is absolutely needed in the face of an external threat. And the external threat here profoundly lies in the inherent instability of the United States' position regarding this ongoing war, since their stance is noticeably wavering and uncertain.
In his recently published column, Zaluzhnyi noted that only a devastating defeat and loss of independence would stand behind a quick peace. He suggests focusing on the idea of a ceasefire and final peace agreements with Russia. In his opinion, this is only possible if there are 100% security guarantees.
Such security guarantees could include Ukraine's accession to NATO, the deployment of nuclear weapons on Ukrainian territory, or the stationing of a large military contingent capable of countering Russia. However, today this is not being discussed, especially given both the technological and doctrinal unpreparedness. For any NATO member country or any other except Russia, Ukraine, and China, this issue fundamentally cannot be considered.
After Russia failed to physically conquer Ukraine, the former commander-in-chief is convinced that the Kremlin, in addition to the military component, has focused on undermining Ukrainian society from within. This is the so-called strategy of attrition.
The strategy of attrition has its decisive blow, and if for the Oppo, this is about bringing the country to collapse through military actions as well as the political and economic situation. So what then is the decisive blow in this situation? If we recall history, the answer is obvious. It's civil war. Yes, this is exactly the decisive blow that Russia systematically seeks to achieve by implementing the strategy of attrition.
In Zaluzhny's opinion, freezing the conflict along the front line is currently one of the most likely scenarios for ending the war. But the truce will be short-lived, and
an intermediate stage may involve freezing hostilities along the front line, which I currently consider not yet the most likely scenario. Whether someone likes it or not, these are the objective realities and factors that are taking shape both on the battlefield, economically, socially, and politically.
The return of Zaluzhnyi to Ukraine and his article are definitely a signal to Ukrainian society and the whole world that the struggle continues both diplomatically and militarily, and no one will agree to Russia's terms.
This is a true triumph for the armed forces of Ukraine. A blackout has hit the Russian Federation. Moscow is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The enemy's territory is turning into a real hell. Refineries and ports can't withstand the pressure. They're collapsing one after another. Even the Kadyrovites are powerless. The defeat of the Akhmat regiment has brought the enemy's military might to its knees. Problems with air defense can no longer be hidden. The countdown has begun. How much longer can the enemy hold out? We'll find out in just a moment. Russia is in flames and darkness. There's a blackout in the Moscow region. Dozens of residential buildings have been left without power.
Over there, it's completely dark. The fourth map wasn't lit up, and here, not a single one at all.
Russians are sitting in the dark. It's not the first month that a massive power outage has occurred in the Moscow region. Well, the good drones did a good job, although the occupation authorities, of course, deny it.
There was nothing like this in 2022 or 2023, and not in 2024 either.
And now it's a good morning in the Krasnodar region. Local residents are reporting explosions in two apps. The Ilsky oil refinery and one of the local ports may have been hit.
And at night, drones set fires at an oil depot in the Oriol region.
Even the schematic is burning now. I don't know how that's possible. Oh damn, you see, it's blazing.
And this is the standard way a day begins or an evening ends in Russia. What once seemed very distant is becoming more and more realistic.
The year 2025, this is a record year for the number of drones over the territory of the Russian Federation. Along with the drones, missiles are starting to come in as well. These include both small-sized missiles and, for example, the long Neptune, Neptune D. There are also Flamingo missiles.
Chechnya has also come under the crosshairs of UAVs. Local residents report that as a result of the attack, the FSB building was damaged, and the Akhmat unit base in Guntermes was also shelled.
This is a specific, powerful element, and it plays its significant role and firmly occupies its rightful place within the established Russian hierarchy. And not the last one either. Destruction, reduction, devastation. This is very important for this direction. We will find each and every one of them. And this is a very important message so that every Kadyrovite who came to Ukraine understands that one way or another they will be found. We will find Russian generals, destroy them, blow them up. An ordinary Kadyrovite will simply be smeared against the wall by another drone, and we'll even send him a package from Nova Pochta with a piece of salo.
Let us remind you that on the night of November 25th, Ukraine attacked the aircraft repair plant named after Barayev in Taganrog, which is capable of modernizing and servicing Tu-95 MS aircraft. As a result, the occupiers lost the ability to further operate this aviation. As a result of the strike, two A-60 and A-100 double-L aircraft were destroyed.
As a direct and devastating result of the precise and impactful strike, two highly specialized aircraft, specifically an A-60 and an A-100 Lima model, were completely and utterly destroyed. However, despite initial intentions or potential, this particular aircraft was regrettably never brought to any fully operational condition whatsoever. The catastrophic and irreversible destruction of this crucial aircraft essentially and definitively puts a complete and total end to the entire ambitious aviation program, specifically the Advanced Laser Aviation Program, which was a significant and strategic initiative of the Russian Federation. As of today, with the destruction of the aircraft, Russia simply no longer has it. With the loss of the A-100LL, the possibility of continuing these experimental stages to create something new disappears. Although, to be honest, the A-100, the new generation of the A-50, was already technically and technologically outdated compared to its Western counterparts. This is
just a small part of where lately UAVs have been flying, striking military and critical infrastructure targets on Russian territory. Of course, after each attack, the Russian Ministry of Defense reports that most of the UAVs were shot down. But for some reason, after the phrase "all targets have been eliminated," dozens of videos showing fires appear in Russian Telegram channels. The reason is obvious: poor air defense performance.
Russia has always had problems with air defense. Even in the USSR, it was never fully covered. The airspace was not completely secured. The USSR never had significantly more capabilities in this area. That is precisely why Russia inherited a truly immense and expansive territory, along with a considerably large and extensive airspace that inherently possesses numerous significant blind spots and critical gaps, through which, regrettably, various types of munitions can undeniably and easily fly.
The armed forces of Ukraine have already brought a blackout closer in the southern part of Russia, so Putin's capital may also soon be plunged into complete darkness.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The urgent capture of Pokrovsk. The Russians are shouting about their successes. Is Gerasimov rushing to Putin for a dressing down? It's begun. Propaganda is at it again. The dictator is obsessed with grand conquests of Ukraine. Statements for which the Ukrainian Armed Forces are ready to take revenge to the last Russian. The hell on the front is heating up. Our defenders stand firm. The occupiers are one step away from fleeing. Battles that send chills down your spine. So what did the dictator's and his cronies' lies turn into for the Russian mercenaries? On the front line, don't miss what's next. On the eve of the visit by US President Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, the Kremlin dictator Putin supposedly paid a visit on the first day of winter, one of the command posts of the Russian army, and announced intentions to create a security zone along the border with Ukraine in the area of responsibility of the
North Group, Pokrovske, Komsomolske, Krasnogvardeyske. Are these the same or different places? No, they don't care. They fed Witkov some story about how we're about to take Pokrovsk with Kansk. At the meeting with the American delegation, our military came and said, here's the map. Look, this is Pokrovsk, this is Kupiansk. Nope, they lied to you. He comes to Moscow, Putin tells him, sorry bro, not Kupiansk, but Vovchansk, but they took him.
The chief of the general staff of the occupying army, Valery Gerasimov, reported to Putin about the alleged liberation of the city, Krasnoarmysk. That's what Russians call the Ukrainian cities of Pokrovsk and Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region. This information has already been refuted by the Ukrainian side.
We can say that Putin wants to show off a fake victory that doesn't actually exist, since he lied about Russian troops having taken Pokrovsk. He constantly lies about Kupiansk, where the situation is actually turning against the Russian army, and this needs to be especially emphasized. Why did he make a statement about Pokrovsk? Pokrovsk because there was another flag-raising incident there. Under the cover of fog, Russian troops raised their flag there, took photos of it, and posted them on social media. Well, basically, this went up the chain and gave Putin grounds to claim that Pokrovsk had been taken. Later, of course, the flag was taken down, but as they say, the information had already spread.
The occupiers also made statements about an offensive in the Dnipropetrovsk region and the start of an operation to liberate Huliaipol.
In response to our reinforcement in the north, the enemy is deploying additional reserves. Obviously, the brigades they are now deploying are the ones that were supposed to be used in the second echelon to build on their success. This means their reserves are not unlimited.
According to Deep State, the Russian army has advanced in Pokrovsk and near Mirnohrad. There was also a breakthrough in Stepnohirsk in the Zaporizhzhia direction.
Yesterday, the head of the Russian General Staff, Gerasimov, stated that Stepnohirsk is encircled.
Upon returning to the Kremlin, Putin demonstratively held another meeting with the governor of the Kursk region. They discussed displaced persons from the border regions of Kursk.
Such disinformation, of course, could be tied to WITKOFF's visit. Naturally, this will be fed into his ears. I'm very afraid that this will then make its way to Washington and turn into yet another round of pressure on Ukraine. We could have lost Donbas even faster, since Putin has taken protection, in quotes. He has taken Kupiansk, in quotes. And you will keep losing territory, so accept the terms of the peace agreement being offered to you, because otherwise things will get worse. No.
Despite the lull in the information space, actual fighting continues in the Sumy direction.
The scale of confrontation there is smaller because the Russians have redeployed their main forces, including those same Marine brigades. They need them badly near Pokrovsk. And in the Kostiantynivka direction as well. But we were forced to significantly reduce the number of our own military forces in order to comply.
In Kherson, the Russian army, which previously fought against the civilian population, there the occupiers hunt down every unarmed person, anyone unable to escape from a drone or a KAB bomb. Russia's Shadow Fleet has finally reached its intended destination. However, no one has reported this to Putin yet. The tankers are going to the bottom. Strikes on the maritime giants are happening live. The SBU broke in hard and turned the sea into a trap for the Russians. Turkey is getting nervous. Something massive has started near its shores. You have to see this. Moscow has finally gotten what it deserves. The Kremlin is losing its last financial levers. The first details about this are coming up in the next segment. It seems that the Black Sea is no longer safe for Russian ships at all. Another tanker from the so-called Shadow Fleet, Rev, was attacked 80 miles off the coast of Turkey. The Mid-Volga II was on a voyage from Russia to Georgia. There were 13 crew members on board. According to Ankara, no one was injured. According to Turkey's Ministry of Transport, although damaged, the Mid-Volga II is currently underway towards sign-up and does not require assistance. The Mid-Volga II tanker reported that it was attacked 80 miles out from our coastline, heading from Russia to Georgia with a cargo of sunflower oil. The Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure of Turkey. Built in 2014, the 140-meter Mid-Volga II sails under the Russian flag and belongs to the Middle Volga Shipping Company. Its Russia-Georgia route is a typical route for transporting agricultural products and petroleum products. Therefore, such a vessel automatically falls under increased scrutiny both from Ukraine and from international bodies that monitor possible schemes to circumvent oil sanctions. This attack became another link in the explosive series targeting Russia's Shadow Fleet. Recently, on the other side of the Atlantic near Dakar, Senegal, the oil tanker Mersin carrying a cargo of diesel fuel suffered 4 external explosions. It is known that in August of this year, the vessel visited the Russian port of Tamanin and previously had repeatedly called at the port of Novorossiysk. Earlier, 2 other sanctioned Russian tankers, Cairo and Virat, were struck in the Black Sea by maritime drones as part of a joint operation by the Security Service and the Naval Forces of Ukraine. The Security Service of Ukraine continues active measures to cut off Russia's financial ability to wage war against Ukraine. Sea Baby maritime drones have disabled vessels that could have been transporting oil, almost by 70 million, and helped the Kremlin circumvent international sanctions, sources in the Security Service of Ukraine noted. These vessels are also part of the so-called Shadow Fleet of the aggressor state, which was used to bypass international sanctions. According to Ukrainian sources, both tankers sustained critical damage and have effectively been put out of operation.
This is the Mossad tactic. Some were sunk, others now think twice before acting. Yes, that's exactly how it should be. I assure you, until the same thing happens in the Baltic Sea, no one in Europe will even start to react. I think it would be very appropriate to do this, for example, close to the territorial waters of Poland and the Baltic states. These people definitely won't notice anything. They'll just close their eyes and say, was someone swimming there? No, we don't see anything. We don't know anything. And so on. Yes, that's exactly how it should be. Ideally, we should be sinking them everywhere if we have the technical capability, both in Vladivostok and here, all along the line so that they understand there needs to be pressure. Because without sinking these ships, nothing will happen. Everyone will understand that things are serious. And that's exactly how we need to work. That's how we need to work so that they remember forever that you can't mess with Ukraine.
The attacks, which happened just a few dozen nautical miles from the Turkish coast, provoked a sharp reaction from Ankara. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called these events a troubling escalation of the situation.
the war between Russia and Ukraine clearly threatens the safety of shipping in the Black Sea. On Friday, there was a troubling escalation in our exclusive economic zone when merchant ships were attacked. In particular, we cannot in any way justify these attacks, which threaten the safety of navigation, lives, and the environment in our exclusive zone.
As we can see, the Russian shadow fleet can no longer feel safe anywhere. The strikes by Ukrainian naval drones as well as high-profile attacks on tankers show that the Kremlin is losing its freedom of maneuver at sea. And every destroyed or disabled tanker, this is not only a financial blow to Moscow, but also a serious hit to the ego of the Russian Tsar. But that's not all. At the same time, Kiev is striking at the rear of Mother Russia. In November, the armed forces of Ukraine attacked Russian oil refineries with drones at least 14 times. According to Bloomberg, this is a record number of strikes on Russia's strategic oil infrastructure since the start of the full-scale war. That's all from me for now. This was me, Darina Hutsakalo. Stay tuned for even more scorching news in our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.